So we call this situation adrenal stress. And it's important to realize that adrenal stress is what usually precedes adrenal fatigue. And adrenal stress can lead to a number of problems. And this is a great graph. Here's where we are when we should be. On this part of the axis is DHEA levels. So this is low DHEA, this is high DHEA. This is low cortisol, this is high cortisol. So here we are, we're normal, everything's good, and we're relatively balanced between these two. If we apply stress on a chronic basis, or a normal stress response is here. DHEA goes way up, cortisol goes way up. We're still in balance. But if that stress is then applied for a longer and longer period of time, we start to go this way. What's happening here? Cortisol production is staying high, but DHEA is going low. Eventually, we get to the point here where we're starting to fall off, and we eventually go down to C, which is basically adrenal fatigue. So you can see how that goes. First, we lose DHEA on this axis, so going this way, and it's only towards the end that we start to lose cortisol, because it's for survival. You have to preserve it above everything else in the organism. So chronic stress leads to a catabolic state with muscle and bone loss, decreased immune function, and it turns out loss of brain cells. There is direct scientific evidence that is incontrovertible that high cortisol levels that are not balanced with DHEA kill cells in the hippocampus of the brain. And the hippocampus is where we store or convert memories. And that's where the connection with loss of memory, can't remember, can't place things, somewhat confused, it's because that's happening. As well, we get poor digestion of certain vitamins and nutrients. We get decreased DHEA and testosterone, which gives us less energy, because DHEA is for energy, and so is testosterone, and less sex drive. And we get something, there's going to be a test later on, so I want you all to memorize this compound. 11-beta hydroxy steroid dehydrogenase. Do you ever wonder who comes up with these names? From now on, we're going to just call this HSD. But increased stress increases HSD. And we're going to talk about why that's important, but basically, it increases fat storage. So stress makes you fat on a number of levels. Because this is an intracellular enzyme that makes cortisol all on its own. So increased cortisol leads to increased belly fat. It can make you fat. This is what kills me, because up until a year ago, I believed, people come in saying, I'm struggling with my weight, I don't know what to do, and I'm thinking to myself, calories in, calories out. Where are you going after this? I bet you're going to McDonald's, Big Mac attack, okay. It is more than calories in and calories out, but that's what the nutrition teaching in medical school still is. Calories in and calories out. And this is one of the connections where it's more than that. This is why it's not just that simple. Increased cortisol affects fat cells through that HSD enzyme to increase the number of fat cells. We never thought that could happen. We now have proof it does. It also increases fat cell size, so fat cells get bigger. As they get bigger, it's hard for insulin to do its job. So we get something called insulin resistance, which is even worse than what we've talked about already. As I said before, 50% of body cortisol comes from this HSD enzyme. That means even if you are totally good in your stress score, but you inherited the genes from your parents of a heavy family, you inherited high levels of this enzyme. You have one strike against you already. It's not low thyroid or other things like that. It's this enzyme. And we can now, in experimental situations, measure this enzyme and learn what controls it. And soon we'll be able to measure it in the general population and design strategies for them. So even if you're cool with stress, high HDSD levels can make your fat cells see more cortisol, because that enzyme converts an inactive form of cortisone to cortisol in the cell. And we think now it's responsible for up to 50% of all the cortisol produced in the body. So it's a membrane-bound enzyme in fat cells. It's strongly associated with abdominal obesity, genetically determined, so you are what your parents are. And levels rise as we age. Levels triple as we age. There's a reason why, as a general population, we tend to gain weight because of this enzyme. And some of the other hormone changes that happen, because, remember, we're also breaking down our muscle as we go. If we break down our muscle, we break down our sugar-burning machine. Very low-calorie diets can triple your HSD activity. So talk about shooting yourself in the head. You go on one of these low-calorie diets. You know, what's the typical thing? I tell most people, if you go on a diet, there's only one thing I can guarantee you. You will be heavier than I know, than you have been now. You'll lose weight, go back to what you were doing, and eventually you'll be 5 to 10 pounds heavier than the day you started your diet. That's it. It's not without exception, but it does tend to be the general rule. And this is one of the reasons why that's the case. I'm not expecting you all to remember all this, but there'll be a couple catch things to do. So, what kind of problems can adrenal stress cause? Well, it can cause high blood pressure. It can cause diabetes. It can cause obesity, fatigue, depression and moodiness, decreased sex drive, irregular periods, and osteoporosis. Maybe there's one more. Oh yeah, and GI trouble. It turns out these disorders are responsible for 70% of the visits of you all to doctors. Right there. But we all treat this, we treat this, we treat this, we treat this. We treat the individual problems as they show up. We don't go back to what's the driving force. That's what makes, to me, functional and regenerative medicine so refreshing. It's going back to looking at the basics of why is this stuff happening to us, rather than, okay, I'm on a blood pressure pill. Oh, here comes the diabetes pill. Oh, I need more blood pressure medication. All of a sudden, my diabetes pills aren't good enough. I'm going to have to take insulin. And I feel like crap all the time, and I just keep gaining weight. There's a reason why that's happening. Oh, and I forgot Alzheimer's disease. Because we used to think, no. That was good. I like that. I'll have to try and remember it.